I'm 62 years old, and the smartest thing I did during my entire time in the Philippines cost me absolutely nothing. Not a single peso. It was 3 sentences typed into a WhatsApp message one evening, telling Joy that my pension had been formally suspended. I sent that message at 8:47 at night. She read it in seconds. I could see the blue check marks appear almost immediately. Then, silence. 11 minutes of silence while I sat with the phone in my hand, watching the screen. And then her reply came back. 8 words. 8 words that told me everything $350,000 of painful experience had not yet managed to make me accept. No warmth, no concern, no partnership. Just a cold, flat, forward-looking assessment that finally broke through every wall I had built between myself and the truth. If you have a pension, if you have savings, if you are somewhere right now with a young Filipina girlfriend who seems almost too good to be true, I am asking you to listen to what I'm about to describe very carefully. Because the test I ran by accident could have saved me 9 months of systematic financial destruction if I had thought to run it 9 months earlier. Subscribe to this channel, stay with me on this, because what I learned in the Philippines cost me my entire retirement, and I am going to give that education to you for free. I spent 32 years as a logistics supervisor in Columbus, Ohio. I managed supply chains, shipping routes, warehouses, and teams of people who depended on systems running correctly. I understood operations. I understood how things moved, what signaled a breakdown before it became one, how to read the difference between a system functioning as designed and a system being quietly exploited. I was not, by any reasonable definition, a naive man. I had a bachelor's degree, 3 decades of management experience, and what I believed was a well-calibrated sense of judgment. I retired at 62 with $350,000 saved, a monthly pension, and a clear understanding that I had spent most of my adult life being reliable, competent, and completely invisible. My apartment in Columbus had the silence of a place that has only ever known one person for too long. I ate dinner alone. I watched the news without much interest in it. When I started researching the Philippines, I was not only looking for warm weather and lower costs, I was looking for a life that felt inhabited again. I found Joy through an expat contact who vouched for her as a serious traditional woman from a good family. We spoke online for about 2 months before I flew over to meet her, and when I did, she was everything the description had promised. Composed, attentive, warm in a way that felt genuine and unhurried. She listened to me talk about my career and my past with what looked like real curiosity. She asked good questions. She seemed to want to understand me rather than simply impress me. I know now that this quality, this apparent interest in who I actually was the most sophisticated element of her technique, because it made everything that followed feel like love rather than business. By the time I returned to Columbus to finalize my move, I had already decided. Joy was real. The connection was real. The life I was building in the Philippines was real, and I was going to protect it. The money left in increments. That is one of the things I want you to understand most clearly, because the incremental nature of the drain is precisely what makes it survivable in the moment and catastrophic in retrospect. It did not begin with a large, dramatic request. It began with a request so modest and reasonable that saying no would have felt like a character failure. Her mother needed medication that the local health center did not stock. 3,000 pesos, about $55. I paid it without a second thought. 3 weeks later, her younger sibling's school tuition was overdue. 20,000 pesos, roughly $350. I paid it and felt good about being the man who could fix that kind of problem. Then a hospital visit for an uncle. then a land title filing fee at a government office that needed to be paid before a deadline, then the roof on the province house. She was shaking when she explained it, ashamed to ask, eyes wet, voice barely above a whisper. 40,000 pesos for materials, 30,000 for labor. I wired it through a Palawan Express branch near the apartment, one of those orange and green transfer counters that line the streets of every Philippine city like financial confession booths. I told myself what every man in my position tells himself. This is her culture. This is what family means here. This is the traditional life I chose. What I did not tell myself, what I actively avoided telling myself, was the obvious observation that a pattern of emergencies arriving at specific intervals with specific sizes was not a feature of Filipino family life. It was a schedule. I had spent 32 years reading supply chains and operational patterns. I knew what a regular extraction cycle looked like in an inventory system. I was watching exactly that play out in my personal finances, and I was choosing, deliberately and consciously, to not see it. Because seeing it would have meant dismantling the story I had built my entire retirement around. And I was 62 years old, and I was lonely, and I was not willing to do that. Not yet. Across 9 months, the total sent in what I logged loosely as emergencies came to $49,000. I didn't track it in real time because tracking it meant facing it. I also put $60,000 into a retirement house in her province. Concrete construction, 2 bedrooms, a porch facing the rice fields, on land titled in Joy's name because Philippine law prohibits foreign ownership. Her family's lawyer produced a usufruct agreement written in formal English that supposedly guaranteed my right to inhabit the property. I signed it across a desk from Joy and her calm, well-dressed attorney in a clean office in Tacloban, and I felt like I was signing the beginning of the rest of my life. What I was actually signing was the final element of a structure that had been designed before I ever landed in the country. Month 9 was when I sent the message. I want to tell you exactly how it happened, because the sequence matters. A few weeks before, I had noticed things that I kept dismissing individually, but that were accumulating into something my 32 years of systems thinking would not let me completely ignore. Joy's phone always faced down when I entered a room. Long calls in Tagalog with laughter she didn't translate. A brief coldness when I mentioned that I had spoken with an old friend in Ohio who had asked about my financial situation. Each of these on its own was explainable. Taken together, they formed a pattern, and I knew what patterns meant even when I didn't want to act on that knowledge. One evening, I sat down with my phone and made a decision. I typed a message to Joy explaining that I had received official word from my former employer's pension administrator that my monthly payments were being suspended due to a compliance review. That the timeline for resolution was unclear, possibly 3 to 6 months. That I wanted to let her know so we could think about how to adjust our plans. I sent it at 8:47 p.m. She read it immediately. The delivery indicators changed within seconds of sending. Then, nothing. I sat watching the screen with a feeling in my chest that was not quite hope and not quite dread, but something between them that I had learned to recognize in 30 years of work, as the feeling you get right before an important variable reveals itself. 11 minutes passed. Then her reply appeared. "You should have told me sooner. I don't know what we do now." I read it 3 times, 8 words. No variation in meaning across any of the 3 readings. No inquiry about my well-being. No expression of solidarity or partnership. No love in any form. Just a cold, logistical response that treated the suspension of my income as a supply chain disruption to be managed. I had been her income stream for 9 months, and I had just informed her the stream was interrupted. She had responded exactly as a financial manager would respond to a cash flow problem. Not as a girlfriend, not as a partner, as a manager of an asset that had just reported a problem. Something locked into place in my chest reading those 8 words. Not heartbreak, something colder than heartbreak, clarity. I did not confront her immediately. I put the phone down and spent the next week being very quiet and very deliberate. I contacted a retired American I trusted, a man who had been living in the Leyte area for years and who knew how to find out things carefully. What he helped me confirm over the following days was worse than I had been prepared for. Joy had a child, a 3-year-old boy living with her mother in the province, whom she had never once mentioned across 9 months of what I believed was complete mutual honesty. Joy had a Filipino partner, a man named Rodel, who was the father of that child, and who she had maintained a continuous relationship with throughout our entire time together. The contact who had originally introduced us was her cousin, not a neutral third party. The lawyer who drafted my usufruct agreement was personally connected to her family. The emergency requests across 9 months had been coordinated, timed, and sized specifically to stay below the threshold that would trigger direct questions. I went back and found a second phone, a cheap Android device hidden inside a bag inside another bag in the storage room of the house I had built, and found the message history with Rodel going back to months before I arrived in the country. She had been running both situations simultaneously from the beginning. Every transfer I had made, every emergency I had funded, every evening we had spent on the porch watching the rice fields while she held my arm and called me forever. All of it was a parallel track running alongside a relationship she had never ended and never intended to end. The pension message had not ended the operation. It had simply made the operation unprofitable to continue. That was all those 8 words meant. I walked out of that house the following morning with a backpack. She did not try to stop me. She had the house, the deed, the 9 months of transfers, and the complete financial outcome. There was nothing left worth pursuing. I am sitting in a $10 room in Manila now, and I want to tell you something with the kind of directness that only a man who has already lost everything can manage. Run the test. Not at month 9, not after you have built a house, not after you have wired $50,000 through orange and green counters to people you have never met. Run it early. Tell her something that temporarily removes the financial value you represent, and watch what is left when the value is gone. If what is left is a person who is genuinely concerned about you, who looks for ways to adapt and support and stay, then what you have may be worth protecting. If what is left is 8 cold words about logistics, you have your answer while you still have time and resources to act on it. This is not cynicism. This is not an argument that every Filipino woman is scheming and every relationship is fraudulent. It is a very simple operational principle that I applied to supply chains for 32 years and failed, catastrophically, to apply to the most important financial and personal decision of my retirement. Verify the claim before you build the infrastructure around it. I built the infrastructure first. The house, the transfers, the emotional investment, the usufruct agreement I signed in a Tacloban office, all of it constructed before I ran the one test that would have told me everything I needed to know in month 1. $350,000 is what that sequencing error cost me. Here is what I want you to take from this specifically. The test does not require drama. It does not require accusations or confrontation. It requires only that you temporarily remove the thing of value you represent and observe what remains. You can do it gently. You can frame it as a routine financial hiccup. You do not need to announce that you are testing her. You simply watch what she does when the benefit of being with you is briefly suspended. A woman who loves you responds to your financial problem by focusing on you. A woman who is managing you as an asset responds to your financial problem by focusing on the asset. That distinction, observed cleanly and early, will save you more money and more years than anything else I can tell you. I learned it at month 9. It should have been month 1. Subscribe to this channel. I record these videos from a $10 room with a ceiling fan because I have nothing left to protect and everything to share. Every trap, every mechanism, every red flag, every test I should have run earlier. I am going to walk you through all of it, video by video, with the specific detail that might actually save someone. I am already the warning. You do not have to become one too. Every week I will add to what I know here, new cases, new patterns, new variations on the same fundamental operation. Because the operation adapts, the specific details change, the platforms change, the stories change, but the underlying structure, find the loneliness, feed the need, build the dependency, extract the asset, that structure does not change because it does not have to. It works. It worked on me. It is working on men right now who have not yet reached month 9. Be the man who reaches month 1 with this knowledge instead of month 9 without it. Subscribe, stay on this channel, and run the test early.